into consideration that their child's well-being needs to be addressed. Rather, they're all about what my child is going to promote for me. There's no greater selfish act than using your child as a platform.
Well, there's a lot of those parent-run accounts, especially in the training world, like you said, and just really, really young kids, elementary school, middle school, and it's a parent-run account, and they're posting their girls, like, on their grind and training hard, and it's really teaching the kid, "Oh, well, I'm going to train for the social media validation and getting as many likes as possible, or me doing this workout, getting views," but the kid should just be training to train because they enjoy it and not because about the response that they're going to get on their social media page. It's teaching kids the wrong thing and that external validation.
Well, wouldn't you love for your athletes to show up for their sport because they love it so much, they have a passion for it, that they want to just grow within it and then take all the lessons it offers? I mean, parents, let's call a spade a spade. How many of you put your child into sport thinking that they're the next professional athlete? So many do. I have to say it's terrifying. Whereas as a parent to two children that are in a very competitive world of boxing, I didn't put them into this sport. Number one, I didn't put my daughter into it intentionally at all. It was just she was in the boxing gym with my son from such a young age. She asked to do it. But I put my child into sports because I wanted them to learn discipline, respect, responsibility, commitment to a team effort there is a team or whatever sport there is, to learn the independence and the confidence it can build. Not because I ever thought that it would translate to a professional athlete. It was to grow them in their character and who they are. But when we start utilizing social media as the reason behind their want to play a sport, they don't know who they are anymore because they are now showing up in a false reality, all for the platform they've created rather than learning who they really are character wise and from an integritous place, rather. So now they're lost in the sauce. And what does that translate to as their future unfolds?
Not the kid's fault either, and I want to
Oh,
really touch on how the parents just fuel all this. So what would you say to the parents about all this? And just I think a lot of them are in denial that this is happening, and they just chalk it up to, "Oh, well, it's just our world now. We just live in a
right.
social media world." But I'd argue you don't need to share friggin' everything. Have some privacy. Live life. Build genuine relationships.
Well, that's it. You're making a choice. Every time you open your phone and open your social media accounts, you're making a choice to choose that life over what reality is. And if we were look at the statistics of depression and anxiety within the teenage and young adult world, it has grown exponentially, literally at a 125% rate over the past decade. And why is that? Well, parents, you are responsible for the growth of your child. First and foremost, their emotional and mental well being. And if you are just succumbing to the social norms that have been created, what are you teaching your children? That they're not an individual? That they're just to go follow the current? Or can they sit there and pave their own way? And what are you saying about yourself too when you're like, well, it's just the norm? It's just what today's day. Yes. Do we have to accept certain things about today's day and age versus what it was back 30 years ago? Sure. But do we have to completely allow it to take over our life? No, again, that's a choice. You're choosing that life. But at the end of the day, when we think about what matters most and what translates to the greatest growth as a person, it's going to be all of the relationships we have around us. Real relationships, genuine relationships, physical presence of people. How many of you sit on your social media platforms day in and day out, but there's nobody around you? And then when you go to shut it down, you can't find yourself able to shut it down. You can't put the phone down. Because why? Because you have nothing else but that. And then what happens? You find yourself depressed, anxious, falling into this downward spiral of also maybe other types of mental illnesses, personality disorders, because you don't know who you are. So I have been doing a fantastic study with the head of Harvard Hospital in the psychiatric ward. It has broken down the different levels of mental health and mental wellness, if you will, and then mental disabilities from bipolarity, schizophrenia, personality disorders, ADD, ADHD, and everything in between, depression and anxiety, of course, being byproducts of a lot of those different ailments. Studies over the last 3 decades, because I don't review any studies that are shorter than a few decades. I don't want anything that's a 6 month study, a 12-month study. I don't want any of that because it's not enough time to really give any sort of true factual data, if you will. So, over 3 decades, he's been studying the brain metabolism in these different disorders. And it all translates to, of course, there's always going to be an exception. So, we'll never discount that. But the majority of things that are being labeled as chemical imbalances are actually lifestyle choices. So, the brain metabolism is a lifestyle choice based off of sleep, nutrition, movement, and then, of course, everything that you surround yourself with. In other words, relationships. So, all of these byproducts in the mental health world are now being confirmed that they are lifestyle choices. They are not chemical imbalances. That's going to be a very hard pill to swallow for some of us parents. So, your lifestyle choices, including the phone and your social media accounts, are the actual catalyst for mental illness. Period. The end. I will say that with confidence.
I'm so glad you brought that up because when a young girl maybe gets diagnosed with one of these mental disorders, the first thing the psychiatrist or even the parent will think, oh, well, it is the chemical imbalance. We need to prescribe psychiatric meds. But no one looks at, like you said, the lifestyle factors. And I'm a huge fan of nutritional psychiatry and making sure girls are getting proteins and healthy fats because that's help makes the brain up and that's what keeps them like sharp and healthy and creative and in a good mood. So it's like, why can't we start there first? And I'm not saying don't consider psychiatric meds. There's a time and place for certain cases, but not enough people are looking at these lifestyle factors and the repercussions of social media at a young age and constantly be on the phone, girls constantly looking at other influencers and comparing or getting FOMO because they're not living life this certain way. And there's more influencers coming out now who have been online for a while, sharing their lives and, posting brand deals and constantly going to events and being on their phone at these events and posting their relationships. And they're coming out now saying, this is what led to my depression. And I really had to take a step back. But then there's also some influencers who talk about, oh, I'm depressed. Here's me popping this pill and I can't do anything about it. And I'm like, yeah, you're on your phone 24/7. You really think this is going to help that much? So there's that side of it too. And then they identify with their depression or their mental illness and it becomes their brand and it's in their bio and they're a victim of it. And it's like they
Right.
can't get out because it's their personality at that point.
Right.
It's their
Right.
brand. And that's another problem too, is people talking about their mental illness so much as if it's just like a part of their whole personality. And I don't think that's good either.
No, it's not. Yes, we have to accept that sometimes there's going to be disconnects, if you will. However, the idea of different mental illnesses, I'm going to take it to the definite science behind it. A child's brain begins ultimately comprehending and retaining information at 7 years old. It doesn't fully finish the opportunity to comprehend until about 11, 12 years old, and the retention behind the information they're receiving. So within that time frame, if we are trying to pump our child with way too much stimulation, if you're allowing your children to be on electronics way too much between 7 and 11 years old, that's overstimulating the brain, which will absolutely cause disconnects, right? But here comes the other problem. That's a lifestyle choice. Electronics are a lifestyle choice. It's not a necessity. We had one TV, literally one TV in the house, and it was never on until we were sitting with our parents at night. Movement. Get out of the house. My mother locked the door behind us. Get out. Don't come back until it's the lunchtime or dinner time. That was it. But between 7 and 11, our brains are developing the opportunity to pull in information. So what is your child pulling in? What is it retaining? And then if they're overstimulated without opportunity for response time, right? Because it's between the stimuli and the response time that we are able to truly process. But the response time is in the quiet, in the downtime, without constant stimulation. If they don't have that between school, electronics, athletics, any other extracurriculars that we're now trying to get our kids to do too, because they all have to be like a master pianist also by the time they're 12. I don't want to listen to my kids practice their instruments. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of like nails on a chalkboard for me. But I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I love promotion, but however, at the same time, balance, right? That overstimulation is going to cause them to have what would be labeled as some chemical imbalances. And the parents get into an anxiety fit of, oh my gosh, my child's broken. I have to fix it as soon as possible. And of course, medication is going to be the reason why, or the place to go for the quick fix. Rather than taking a step back, parents, I'm speaking to you directly, reviewing the lifestyle that might require a little more effort on your part, might require a little more attention on your part, because if you pull the electronics from your kid, that means you have to pay attention to them. You have to be more involved with them. You maybe have to put up a fight you're not willing to put up, or you weren't able to, or willing to put up with, but it's for your child's well-being. Because when we do prescribe medication to a child at that age, between 7 and 11, while they're developing mentally, while their brain is developing, they have now become dependent on that medication, which means for the rest of their life, they potentially will need a chemical inclusion in their growth.